Moving lights at the sound booth? Got none of those. But bouncing bars on the RTA? Oh yeah, I got that. Smaart or any other RTA program can be really helpful while you're mixing front of house. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use it to fine-tune your mixes and to train your hearing at the same time. Hey, if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe and ding the little bell to get notified every time I post a new video. I'm here to help you make every worship mix an enjoyable one. Having a really well-trained ear is the greatest asset you can have while mixing. But if you're like me and you're still training your ear, the RTA can be a real help while you're getting your mixes dialed in. It can help you bridge the gap between what's bugging you and what EQ settings will help fix it the fastest. Now, before we get started, you should know that there's no ideal trace or shape that the RTA should look like when you're making a mix. Music is going to have different balances based on the musical style, based on the band and the instrumentation, so you've got to make sure that you're using your ears first and your RTA second. Nobody else in the audience is looking at your RTA, but they can hear the results, and that's what matters most. Now let's start with the kick and the bass because it's all about the low end. When you get that right, everything else falls into place. After I've got my mix up, I can look and see how wide the fundamental of my kick drum is. A lot of guys I know want there just to be 50 hertz in the kick drum, so they'll put a steep cut around 100 so that all that sub energy is going into moving the most air at 50 hertz. But one thing that I prefer is to have a kick drum that has a wider range of frequencies. So I want 50 hertz, but I also want some around 75 or 82. This is helpful when your mix is going to the room, but also to a broadcast feed. Aside from live sound systems, there's not that many other systems that are producing 50 hertz all that well. The other thing that I'm looking for in the low end is the relationship between the kick drum and the bass guitar. I want the kick drum to provide the punch and the bass guitar to provide the sustain. Now, I highly recommend the spectrograph or waterfall plot on your RTA. Being able to see the frequencies over time helps you get that dialed in between your bass and your kick drum. So if I see on my RTA that I'm mostly getting bass out of the low end and not a lot of punch from the kick, I'm going to boost the bottom end of the kick just a little bit more. On the other side, if I'm getting all punch from my kick and no sustain from the bass, that's going to make the mix feel louder, even though it's got a little bit more of that oomph coming at you. Even though I love some punch on the kick drum, the bass adding the sustain helps it have a more solid foundation so that I can push the mix a little bit louder without it feeling harsh. A lot of times drummers will tune their toms to have a pitch bend, so you get doom. And you want both those parts of the note to be even and feel really good. So using the spectrograph, you can see where the note starts and where it ends. This is also really helpful when you're out of time and can't retune the toms, but you gotta get some funky frequency out of it. So if this is making sense to you so far, go ahead and type "It's all about the low end" in the comments below. The next spot that the RTA is really helpful for is dialing in your de-esser. Bright, airy vocals sound great, but when you compress them a lot, sometimes the S's and T's will really jump out and smack you in the face, and that's not really pleasant. The thing is, every singer has a different balance of the frequencies with their S's and T's. And when you're dialing in your de-esser, you want to make sure not to crush all the airy, bright parts of the vowel sounds as well. When you can see clearly on the RTA where the S and SH sounds are, it makes it a lot easier to dial in just the frequencies that are jumping out on that de-esser. Sometimes the S's are up around 10K, but sometimes they're a little lower around 4K. Sometimes even F sounds can jump out and be a problem. As always, I'm trying to use my ear first and then confirm or correct myself with the RTA after.
Grateful love is my unending song. I'll pour out all my love here at your feet. Grateful love is my unending song.
Now, related to the de-esser, a dynamic EQ on your vocals can be really helpful for taming those high-mid frequencies that tend to jump out when a singer gets loud and harsh. Now, if you watch my vocal EQ tutorial, you can see that there's a tension between trying to get it present enough when they're singing low and not harsh and hurting when they're singing loud. Dynamic EQ can help you push down just those certain frequencies when they reach a certain threshold. But the thing about that is it's got to be in the right place in order for it to work. So the RTA can help us dial that in and fine-tune where we're setting our dynamic EQ points. Now, if you're in a feedback-prone environment, either because you have monitor wedges, acoustic instruments with mics on them, or a lapel mic that's ready to take off like a big dog, the RTA can be really helpful in identifying the feedback frequencies before they're out in front of the entire mix. Again, with the spectrograph, we can see where there's a frequency that's constant, even if it's not up above the rest of the trace. Now, it's still up to you to figure out which mic is feeding back, but I'll let you use your intuition on that one. The other benefit to the waterfall plot is that if it's only momentary, you can still catch it if you look over in a few seconds. I mean, I expect you to be looking at the audience and looking at the stage when you're mixing, not staring at the screen. We spend enough of our lives staring at a screen, kind of like you are right now. Now, you can't always guarantee that you're going to have these tools available. So the best thing that you can do for yourself as an audio engineer is to invest the time in practicing and ear training. Hear a feedback frequency or have a friend turn on a tone generator and see if you can guess what frequency it is. When I started, I seriously didn't know the difference between 500 and 5K. Now, I still have some room for growth in my accuracy, but I'm getting better all the time. It's so rewarding when you can hear a frequency, guess what it is, notch it out, and it go away, and you do it the first time. And in live sound, speed is king, and the gear between the ears is the most important. Now, one last trick I use for my RTA is after I've got my mix up and I'm reasonably happy with it, I'll turn it on really slow averaging. This way, even though the notes are changing and moving all around, I'll be able to see a 10-second average of what all those frequencies are to see if any of them are popping out more than others. Sometimes this has to do with the acoustics of the room and how the room is resonating and holding on to certain frequencies longer than others. But if you can use this to your advantage and dial out a couple of those frequencies, you'll notice that your mix can clean up quite a bit. Now, when I'm putting an EQ across my whole mix, I'm usually only cutting 1 or 2, maybe 3 dB. A little bit goes a long way when it's your entire mix. Or instead of putting a graphic EQ on your entire mix, sometimes you just need to adjust one of your inputs like the bass. One question that I see a whole lot on church sound forums is how loud should it be at church? If you want help answering this question and others about how to make your sound team a successful one, download my free guide, How to Lead Your Church Sound Team. The link's down in the description below. Hey, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ding the little bell to get notified every time I post a new video, and we'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.